What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and thumbs up Friday TGIF. I hope you're doing well. Happy days. Today we're talking about making great decisions as we charge at this monster trend line. I've made the red line much brighter for all of you watching on mobile devices who may have a difficult time seeing. Hopefully that helps. We're going to do a few things today. One, we're going to run through what's going on with obviously the price action. Two, we're going to talk about a really good tweet storm that came out a couple days ago that I thought would be a helpful conversation. And then I want to I want to spend the second half of this talking about a concept from a great book that I'm rereading. I read it a couple of years ago, and do one of our Friday presentations that I think people find very helpful to illustrate an idea that will inevitably help make you a better holder, a better investor, a better trader. And honestly, it's just it'll potentially give you some tools to use in life in many situations. But of course, none of this is professional advice. So you don't need to worry about taking anything too seriously, because this is just my opinion, some random guy on the internet. But let's talk about Bitcoin, shall we? Let's zoom in. We're on the daily, and you can see as I drew this trend line much brighter, it's kind of in your face, but you can also see that looking at yesterday's, we have two things going on. We have this trend line on the log scale, it's coming down. We also have this resistance zone that is really kind of showing this big red area, which kind of ties into this idea of vacuums later, which we'll talk about. But I'm going to zoom in. I'm actually going to go to 1 hour here, because I think that will give us a pretty good idea. And you can see over here why we have this zone, right? Because this is where the resistance ended and where the next resistance starts up here. You can also, if you do that volume profiler where you see where the major volume is in the chart, this is a very, very strong or high volume area. So we have three things pushing back on this price. We have the overall trend line of what is potentially considered a bear market. I mean, it's like kind of on the fence if you want to get technical about moving averages, but let's just call it a bear market. So we got the trend line. We have this resistance zone because there's a clear area in the chart that shows that there is a lot of resistance built up here. And then we also have the volume profile, which shows that this is where a majority of volume has happened, not only recently, but all the way back when you scroll back to the on the way up. So this whole area all the way across, very big volume level, which means that there's a lot of price action, a lot of volume that can happen. So that's not good news, not really bad news. It's just for this price, we really need, for all you bulls out there, any whales watching or listening, if you have a spare 30 mil, this would be a great time to start spending it. I mean, just kidding. I mean, kind of not, but we need some serious rocket fuel to get right through this thing. And not only do we need to get through it, we need to come back and we need to bounce off of it. Ideally off of this resistance zone, but even off the trend line would be something positive. So we're watching this. You can see that I mean, this is the same line I had yesterday, and you can see how it almost to the dollar, it bounced right off of there, and now you're seeing it come back, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's certainly going to retest it. I would be surprised if it didn't, but we may not get more than one retest on this particular shot, right? And then you got to get even more volume and more juice to make it through here. So good news, bad news situation. We're going to see, but this is when it comes down to, if we break through all of this and we get confirmation on it, that shifts the probability very much into the bull market favor, at least in the short and even medium term, which is what we're going to be watching. Now on Ethereum, we actually see this happening. It's a little different because the way that the chart works out, it's a little bit, there's not quite as many resistance zones because the closeout area isn't quite as strong on Ethereum as it is on Bitcoin. But you can see that it blew through this trend line. And not only did it blow through this trend line, it bounced off the trend line here, so to speak. I mean, this is a couple, probably $15 off right here. came back up, it came back down. It didn't touch the trend line, but it showed that there is some support. So this is actually really good. So yesterday, it's like, oh man, Ethereum's killing it. Not just that it had a serious price action, is it got that gas required to not only break through, but to hopefully stay on top. So the good news is, hopefully, if Ethereum is leading the charge on the big three, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin, right now, one of them always tends to lead the others in price. If that is the case, hopefully that gets Bitcoin fired up enough to follow suit and to do the exact same thing that Ethereum did. But that's what's going on. So overall, pretty solid stuff. Now we need that final big push to really go full mode. And you can see it over here. Let's go back to CoinMarketCap, refresh, get the latest, hottest, freshest numbers. Switch it over to Bitcoin. You can see we're up to 372. So we've gone from, it was 270 whenever was a couple, like maybe last week, give or take. Now up to 370 for a combination of things, whether it be the taxes, whether you want to believe that, whether or not, it doesn't really matter to me. I think it usually just comes down to, there's always got to be a story. And if the taxes is the compelling story, which it seems to have been, who knows if it's a correlation or a causation situation, but it doesn't matter. It just pulled in an enormous amount of money. Like we talked about yesterday, this is not necessarily raw numbers. This is more just market cap. But BTC dominance continuing to drop, meaning altcoins are getting the action right now. That's why all the conversations are about alt season. That's why you're seeing a majority of people talking about altcoins. That's where you're seeing a lot of the money. And remember, people need to sell Bitcoin to buy altcoins. In many ways, buying an altcoin is going short on Bitcoin because you got to sell it, buy the altcoin. You're essentially hedging that, or betting that altcoins are going to beat Bitcoin, which is kind of a way to short it. In so many words, or at least to hedge against it. We're seeing a lot of volume. We're seeing Ripple's doing pretty well for whatever reasons. I mean, Ripple kind of does its thing, I think, from a market sentiment reason, which is what I tend to look at a lot of. Ripple is often it's kind of one of the, Verge, Tron, Ripple kind of, IOTA is kind of in there, which actually has had some movement. Those tend to be in the proxy world of showing that there's something going on with altcoins beyond anything else, mostly because of price and also just because of the nature of the market and the reputation that it may have. But that's not conclusive evidence. So I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is Bitcoin dominance going down, altcoins going up, market cap's going up. Ethereum showed great stuff over here. Great job, Ethereum. Bitcoin needs to follow suit. And if it does, it's going to be a very, very good weekend. If it doesn't, I don't think it's going to be like a huge failure and come back down here. I think we're going to test it again. It's just kind of gear up and do it again. Now, along these lines, I'll link all this stuff up so you can go check it out. Brendan Bernstein, who is a founding partner at Tetris Capital, and he used to work at Brainchild, HLD, and Goldman Sachs. I do not know Brendan, but great thread, by the way. It's all about doing previous analysis on previous markets, right? This is called fractals, the analog method, whatever you want to call it. It's the same type of thing. And the TLDR, because that's what everyone wants, is that when you look at all these cycles, it tends to go in the follow the methodology where Bitcoin really has to run first, and then it translates into altcoins running on top of that, or after that, I should say, as a way to kind of spill over after the big runs. The altcoins kind of take over the rest of it, and just by the nature of the market caps, they get these insane runs. And so his bottom line is that the alt season, or whatever you want to call it, it may be starting, but he's not declaring it because Bitcoin hasn't had Banana Town, hasn't had a huge run, but he is bullish. He's optimistic on it, and I think that this is going to play out. And that's one thing I'm really waiting for is I'm cautiously buying into a few altcoins, like we talked about, very small positions, just kind of getting into it. But I want Bitcoin to go, I want it to run really hard and then flatten out. And then I'll go big on altcoins, because historically that's when altcoin seasons, you get that massive run up. As opposed to if you start to get altcoins going and then Bitcoin takes off, the altcoin BTC, the Satoshi value it stagnates or it goes down, even with the USD value going up. And there's nothing more frustrating than that. So I'm really that's why I tend to focus on Bitcoin right now. That's what I'm really waiting for. At the same time, hedging myself by buying into some small projects that I really like, which we've talked about, especially coins that have, my opinion, real business cases, use cases, and coins that I believe in. I like the teams. So go check this out. It's a really good thread. Brendan did a great job with this. He provides some really good data. One piece of commentary I would add to this, one metric I look at a lot is the volume of Coinbase signups, Coinbase downloads on the app stores, Binance website traffic, Bittrex website traffic, their volume. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, right? Go to similarweb.com. You can go to App Annie, Apptopia. There's a lot of different resources out there where you can see the very, very kind of loose marketing metrics behind a lot of those sites. But I do know that for Bitcoin to go huge, we need a massive amount of new retail investors for altcoins to have a new, like if we did number 4 here, all-time highs. We could easily see big gains, but I'm talking about like a new bubble, right? Like a whole new, like 300-400% from here. And for that to happen, we kind of need to redo what we did in Q4 last year, which is just sign up 10 million new people or whatever. So I'll link that up. Now, the last piece is about, it's a psychological thing. It's many of you, I think, like. It comes out of a book that I'm rereading. I read this book a couple of years ago called Trading in the Zone. It's a really, really good book. You can get it at coinmastery.com/store. I always try to add books that I really like for a variety of reasons, fiction and nonfiction. Trading in the Zone, audiobook, highly recommended. Go check it out, get a copy. And like every paragraph, every chapter is like a huge, amazing idea. But one thing that it was seemingly a small, almost introductory idea that he talked about is this idea of what he calls horror vacui, which is Latin, I believe, for nature abhors a vacuum. If you took any of the natural sciences in high school or college, you've probably heard this before. This is a pretty famous saying in physics, where nature abhors a vacuum. And that's kind of the cousin of theory of entropy, which is like disorder. Like everything eventually goes to disorder because it fills in all the vacuums of the world. Whatever. He talks about this in a way as it relates to markets, and specifically as it relates to people that are participating in the markets. So for anybody listening, this is not just for traders. It's not just for holders. It's not just for investors. It's really for anybody, because this applies to everything in life. So I encourage you to not only listen, but pay attention. If you're listening on the podcast, watch the YouTube video later on. There's a presentation here that I'm going to pull up right now. And the presentation is called Nature Abhors a Vacuum. Decision points. Got about 12 slides, nothing crazy here. And I'm going to do my best to describe this again. I would encourage you to go read the book, because like everything else, he's going to do a great job. He wrote a book on it. Like that's why he's wrote a book. So let's talk about this. For anybody listening, there is a stick figure on the slide, and then there's a very small box that has a lot of money, like a bunch of $100 bills, but it's a small image. And around both the stick figure and the image is a big blue circle. What this represents is that, let's say this is you, this person, and this amount of money is how much money you have, and more importantly, how much money you feel like you need. And the circle around both of you represents how satisfied you are with that particular amount of money. So what this is visually representing is that you have enough money. The amount of money in your life and the amount of money that you make right now, you're generally okay with it. Like, that's cool. Now, on this slide, we have a person, and then we have a huge amount of money, much bigger amount of money. And now you can see there's a circle around the person, but there's also a new circle around the money versus the other one where they're both in the same circle. And this creates a vacuum between them, right? These are two different things because now you and the thing are separated, and between it is a vacuum. Now, when you talk about nature abhors a vacuum, nature is naturally going to draw you to get this money. You are going to think about it. You are going to want it. You're going to desire it. If you've never read Think and Grow Rich, also in the coinmastery.com/store shop, go read that book by Napoleon Hill. He talks about this in depth about how desire is really the beginning of all path to riches, which it's more of like a spiritual book, to be honest, but it's very, very good. But if you want something that you do not have, if you truly, genuinely want it, it creates a vacuum. Now, in the book, Mark Roberts, I think his name is the author. Is that right? I just want to make sure. Mark Douglas. Okay, I want to make sure. Mark Douglas, isn't he? He's a great guitar player as well. He talks about this vacuum. So he states, the vacuum will draw you from here to the money, but the vacuum is also created because at some point in life, you were not given that thing, or that vacuum can be created when you were a child or whatever. And he gets pretty deep into the kind of psychology of being a kid in that sense. But the vacuum gets created one way or another. And for some people, it's bigger than others. And this can be money, it can be relationships, it can be health, it can be whatever. But it creates a vacuum. And that vacuum you will do everything, both consciously and subconsciously, to get that money. So you see what I'm saying? If you have enough of whatever it is, you don't have that desire to get more. If you long or desire something else, nature is going to create this force that is going to pull you to get that money in one form or another. Now, the unfortunate thing is that this often turns into compulsive or addictive behavior, because that's just what nature is trying to make it happen, and it's almost impossible to overpower nature and biology in many ways. And so what we as humans, as evolved species, have done is create things like basically structured environments. Right? Many would argue that that's what makes humans the most evolved species, is the ability to think critically, rationally, whatever you want to call it. And so when you think about structured processes that allow you to cross this vacuum over to get whatever it is you want, you talk about things like having a plan. You talk like things like being strategic. You talk about being methodical, about having boundaries. And I put a picture up here of a room, probably in a house, because I just wanted to illustrate the idea of having a ceiling and a floor and walls, right? When you have structure, there are finite limits to what you can and cannot do. And so for many people, this is extremely liberating. And it's also how people's brain works. So, okay, you want to get money? Here's a plan. Here's a strategy. Here's a method to do it. Follow this blueprint. Play in this sandbox. And that's how a lot of people are. I mean, that's why most people go and get jobs at companies, right? It gives you this. Now, on the flip side, move myself down over here so you guys can see. On the flip side, there's an unstructured way to get the thing that you want, in this case, money, to fill that vacuum, right? You have no plan, so to speak of. It's completely random. This is obviously these are extremes. No plan, it's random, it's emotional, there are no boundaries and rules. So you see the comparison. This vacuum will be filled. If you want money, if you have a desire for something that money can give you, which I would say 99% of people have this, if you are in crypto for making money, this is you. This is whatever in one way or another. There's a structured way to get the money and there's an unstructured way to get the money. And the thing about markets, this is really taken from the book, Trading the Zone. This is just one idea from the book, which I would encourage you to go read, is that people come into markets and they're used to structured environments. They're used to having things where, like most things in our world have structure to them, right? There are limits. There are finite terms of what you can win and what you can lose, where there's a sandbox on some level, especially as it relates to money. There are very, very few places where it's a complete new, zero rules, zero limits. And so when people come in, they look at a market and their mindset is, okay, well, this is probably going to be like everything else where it is structured, when in reality, this is the most unstructured frontier on earth. Okay, markets have no rules. They have no limits. There are no boundaries. I mean, short of being liquidated on your margin call, there is really no limit to your gains and losses unless you yourself create that structure, right? Unless you put in the stop loss, unless you press the sell button. But otherwise, it's just going to go do what it does. That's it. And this is the problem. This is what happens to so many people, myself included. I would say this was probably the first 6 months of my investing life. Back in 2008, 2009, when I first got completely decimated by the stock market. I mean, I just got owned because of these kind of things, and I've slowly learned it, and I still learn about it. I mean, still fall into this from time to time in crypto as well, and as I explore new markets like futures and forex and all that sort of thing. The key to winning in markets is to add structure to the unstructured environment. Okay, this is really, really important. This is why we talk about the boring stuff, about how, okay, here's probability A, here's probability B, here's probability C. What's your plan? If case it does any three of these, where do you go in? When do you exit? What's the price? What do you do? And the reason why you do that is because that's how you survive in this world. You need to create a structure, because otherwise the market's just going to do whatever it does. And we as humans think that we're powerful and that we're going to control it, but we're not. We're going to succumb to this vacuum, this desire to get whatever it is we need to get, because that's how biologically we evolve, right? We need that to happen. And so you need to create that structure. And so how do you do that? It's just a lot of stuff we talk about here, but it's just a lot of stuff that you can do as well. Having a diary, writing things down, having very set limits on what it is that you will buy, where you will sell, stuff like that. But being planned, being strategic, being methodical, having boundaries. Creating a structure within the market for yourself is the way to control this process, this biological process of the vacuum that is going to happen no matter what. Meaning, how many times have we seen people, or have we have personal experience going into a market, whether it be crypto or anything else, and trying to feel like we have control, or not having a plan, just being like, all right, I'm just going to go in. I know this, I got a feeling about this. This is just going to happen. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. And the longer you do that, the more you end up losing all your money, right? The more you have a plan, the more you can consistently win over time. And so the book Trading in the Zone is really not about trading as much as it's about this kind of mindset. How do you take yourself out of the equation? I often say on this channel, one of the goals in my life is to constantly outsource myself, because I know I am a human just like everybody else. But I also know that one of the things that I have, what my brain can do, is compartmentalize, kind of create different ways of looking at systems and being able to compartmentalize them so that I can allocate, here's a system for that, here's a strategic thing for that, whatever, and remove the emotion from it. And that's what I try to do in markets all the time. It's not the coolest thing in the world. I'm definitely not going to be on the cover of any magazines getting high fives of like some $600 million trade I did. Like, oh, I went long on some Forex. But that's not what I'm going for. I just want to win. I want to win over long term. And this is how you do it. And this is true for anything in life. I mean, get away from the markets, right? If you want to be healthy, if you're healthier, or if you want to get healthy, if you are, if you're like drinking a lot of booze or something else, I mean, the world is not going to stop you from doing that. You have to create systems and structures in order to get the goals, in order to get clean, in order to get healthy, to do it, right? You can't just wing it and expect your biology to take care of you. And markets are the ultimate place that really illustrates that. So I would encourage you to check out the book. This is just, like I said, one concept, but this is what happens. And the key is creating systems to overcome the biological desires that everybody has, that everyone grows up with. All right. So with that, TGIF, as always, I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope we can get some mega volume, bust through this thing, and just keep charging. Always be charging, as we say. And in the meantime, I'll catch you later. All right, guys. Peace out.